And I'm seeing how long I can do nothing for, which I'm sure you can appreciate.
I do like the Wonder Woman shirt. So
I can get one in your size if you want. We could be twinsies.
You are all set to get started whenever you're ready.
Yeah, why don't we give it a couple of minutes and see if, some more will join, and then we can formally kick this off.
Absolutely. Sharon, is it Pribitkin? Is that how I say it?
Yep.
Okay. Was just telling us about how he does a lot of talks on leadership.
Oh, nice.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
it's all, I think everybody has different approaches to the topic. So it's always nice to share, and you listen to people and you learn a lot, so it's pretty neat.
we have a leadership academy every year at our annual meeting that Sharon spearheads. That started about 3 years ago now.
Well, Andrew and Claire, I'm the silent partner.
Yeah, the styles have really changed over the years in leadership. It's really quite a different, we were chatting a little bit about the system for surgeons early in their careers in the 60s and 70s and early 80s, and was truly a hierarchical leadership structure, and how that's really changed over the years, where influence is now the buzzword, right? There's still European system where you have Herr Doctor Professor or Frau Doctor Professor, but generally speaking, it's a very different matrix than it was years and years ago.
Definitely. And I think that, with people paying greater attention to how to, engage underrepresented minorities, it's realizing that, it's not, you can't lead every single person the same way. You have to individualize it.
You really do. And it's not just in relation to patients, it's in relation to your staff, to the other individuals in your organization, to your colleagues. It's really very different, the approaches we take today. Better for it in many, many ways.
Yeah. Okay, maybe we can start this off. Okay, I think we have a quorum for sure. Okay, everyone on the call, thank you for joining. Thank you for registering and logging on this fireside chat with Dr. Pribitkin. Some ground rules before we start. Can I request everyone to pay special attention to muting your microphone before during the conversation, and there'll be open time for questions. A substantial amount of this program will be devoted to open time so that you can ask your questions in your own way, and so that Dr. Pribitkin can answer. Now, on behalf of the Career Development Committee of the Eastern Cardiothoracic Surgical Society, it is my pleasure to host this fireside chat with Dr. Pribitkin. A brief bio: Dr. Pribitkin was the traditional triple threat. He had NIH grant funding. He was a program director for the ENT program at Thomas Jefferson. He's a prolific surgeon, an innovator, an inventor, has patents, devised surgeries, had a roaring clinical practice, top doc in Philadelphia Magazine, and so on and so forth. He did that for a long time. And at some point, and that point we will explore today, he switched tracks a little bit into administration. And he did an MBA out of this some sort of school in Philadelphia. It's called Wharton or something like that. He completed that. And then you could see his career track sort of switch. And today, he is the chief physician executive of Jefferson Health and the president of the Jefferson Medical Group in Philadelphia. And that's a big administrative position. And he's successful at that as well, just like anything else that I can see from his CV that he's done in his life. So we are here to find the secret sauce of what he does and his journey through this, because I'm sure many people in the audience want to do this, or at least want to know if they want to do this or not. And that's what we'll try to unravel here. So Dr. Privitkan, thank you for joining us. If you can start by sort of telling us what your journey was and how you made the decisions as you made them during this transition, that would be great.
Yeah, my pleasure. I thank you for the opportunity to talk with the folks on the call. I think that many of us here are surgeons and we share a certain perspective in terms of getting things done. And so I think when I was training, what we really focused on was getting the cases, learning them how to do the cases, learning better ways to do the cases, learning better ways to deliver care. At some point in my career trajectory, after interviewing for a number of chair positions and trying to decide on the transition, do I try to become a chair? Do I try to work in a different realm? It became obvious to me that healthcare had changed to such a degree that the constraints on chairs, the ability to affect change, that had really been taken away in many ways by healthcare administration. And so one of the areas that I said, rather than try to become a chair and be limited in the effect that I can have, I would like to see if there's a way of changing things at scale. Is there an opportunity to look and see outside of my specialty where I can really affect change? And I looked actually at two different paths. So I think that many people wrestle with what they love about what they do and how to continue doing that for many, many years to come. When you're in education and you love to teach and you love to engage learners and you love the legacy of the learners, one of the natural things to consider is a master or a doctorate in education. And that takes you along a different career track. That takes you along a track of being a vice dean or a dean, perhaps a president of a university. The challenge that I found when I really talked to people that were deans, vice deans, presidents of university chancellors, provosts, is they were overwhelmed by the red tape. By here comes the LCME visit, here comes the GME visit, here's the 700 pages of documentation that I have to produce in order to graduate a
Love you too, honey.
medical student, And so after having that conversation and then also realizing that it's challenging to make that transition also late in one's career, I looked at another area that I really enjoyed, which was essentially, as a surgeon, you joke about it, operations, and how to build efficiencies into the healthcare system, how to really run practices, run offices, run a hospital. And so that's when I looked at getting an MBA. It didn't hurt that the people I talked to were incredibly enthusiastic. So I had the benefit of talking to Steve Klasko, one of the individuals that really, in many ways, changed the course of Thomas Jefferson University from being a small provincial 3-hospital system into an 18-hospital, 60,000 employee system in Philadelphia. And he did that through business tactics, through ways of actually acquiring and merging with other organizations without paying for them. That's pretty impressive to do. And he had to convince a board to do that. And, when someone like that talks to you about the possibilities, about the opportunities of changing at scale, about really making a difference in delivering healthcare, that to me was incredibly appealing. And so he became a mentor of sorts, and that put me down the path of getting an MBA. And when I was looking at an MBA, I really wanted to stay locally because I still believe in family first, and I still feel that that's the obligation that you owe to your family and community. has to come first, that the education needed to be obtained, but I wanted to stay in the area. I was very fortunate to be able to have a wonderful experience at Wharton where I met incredible people and where that sense of excitement really was reinforced. When I finished Wharton, it was really a question of just good fortune. There were some struggles within Jefferson that I was privy to, and there was a need for change within the organization. And Steve picked me to be the chief medical officer at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital. That was an education. I mean, all of a sudden, your colleagues are not so friendly anymore when you're asking them to do things. And, you start to learn to really use your influence in special ways. You realize that the currency that you've developed over the years can be very quickly spent, and that aligning interests is not always so easy. At that time, I was also asked to take over Jefferson University Physicians. It was something that I had requested, that the offices of the chief medical officer downtown and the president of the medical group downtown were combined so that we can really take inpatient and outpatient work and make sure that it's aligned in terms of the objectives of the organization. It went well. I was very fortunate to have a hospital president that was very collaborative. And then when the organization grew to a certain point, Steve said, hey, we need a chief here of Jefferson Health. I've got a lot of other stuff I want to do. I want to keep growing. I want to keep doing things. I don't want to do the operational issues. So we were fortunate to attract from Texas, Bruce Meyer, who became our leader of Jefferson Health. And then Bruce looked at the talent across the organization and was very fortunate that he chose me to be the chief physician executive and run the Jefferson Medical Group. The Jefferson Medical Group really is comprised of about 3,500 physicians and providers that are employed. But the challenge with the Jefferson Medical Group is one where there are about 9 different legacy physician organizations. And so combining that into one organization with standardized processes, standardized compensation, policies, et cetera, was the challenge. And fortunately, I was able to make changes in the structure of the organization, and with the help of legal and HR, exit some individuals that perhaps were not going to be aligned with the future of the organization and build a team. And that has been singularly satisfying, to really build a team that is all on the same page, that really is devoted to your management algorithm, your leadership vision. It really has been a wonderful journey in the sense that you're only as good as the people around you. And so that's really been very gratifying. There are things that I miss, but if you ask me today, do I feel I made the right decision? Absolutely. There are some challenges. Sai has asked me to talk a bit about that, and I'll stop there for a moment, to say I'm very delighted to be in the position that I'm in, but I also realize that a lot of it has to do with serendipity and good fortune. I have had many colleagues who have gone to Wharton, even from Jefferson, who've not been so fortunate in finding positions that really have been satisfying for them. So a lot of it is being in the right place at the right time and understanding the trade-offs that you have to make.
As they say, chance favors the prepared mind, right? So you prepare for it, and when it happens, it's a wonderful thing to see. Now, taking a step back, one of the questions I've often asked people before I started my own MBA journey is, how essential do you think an MBA is? Are these skills that you can pick up by doing individual courses, say in finance or leadership or strategy or something like that? Or is getting that degree essential versus optional? What are your thoughts?
So we live in a very interesting era where resumes are processed at about 5 to 8 seconds a look. And if you don't have that MBA box checked, you won't get opportunities outside of a system that knows you. So you may be outstanding in terms of your skill set, your operational expertise, your strategic vision, but no one will give you that opportunity outside of the people that know you if you don't have that MBA box checked. I can say that because I've tried to recruit people to my organization that I knew were going to be very strong leaders. And I've had HR send them letters. Thank you very much for your application. No, we're not interested. And, it's because they didn't have the MBA box checked, and, then you have to call HR and say, no, actually, we need to change the position description. It's MBA preferred. It's not necessary. This is a person I think is really good, needs to be interviewed. And then you're said, well, you can't, on paper, you shouldn't be interviewing this person. We have a process. I think that if you're serious about moving out of your organization, you need to have that box checked. If you're serious about getting a position as a leader of a physician group, as a CMO, as a leader of a health system, that box is going to have to be checked. Now, is it possible within your organization to move from being a chair to a dean to being a head of a physician group without an MBA? Absolutely, because people know you, people know your skill set, the presidents are comfortable with you, the chair of the board is comfortable with you. So you can make that transition without the MBA. But if you're actually looking to move to another organization, I think it's really challenging. I really think it's anti-stakes, right? That you need to have that. And I would say you need at least 5 years of management experience before you'll be considered for other positions elsewhere, so again, that MBA is just, in a sense, it's a checkbox. Do you need to spend $100,000 a year for 2 years to get an MBA? No, you don't. A little bit depends on what you're looking for. Are you looking for a group of colleagues that are going to share your journey and a group of individuals with whom you're going to be able to have a really strong personal relationship for decades to come? Then I think you want to look at a Wharton, a Booth, those kinds of organizations, or similar organizations that are more local. If you're looking just to acquire certain tools or to learn the MBA language, so what a balance sheet is, what workflows are, how to do acquisitions and mergers, what that even means, A&M. It's not agriculture and minerals like in Texas, it's how it's acquisitions. If you just want that, then you can obtain an MBA relatively inexpensively. You can do it online. You can learn an awful lot. It's not the same experience, but it also can be obtained for $10,000. So when you're looking at your finances, that can make a big difference.
So that's a great segue into my next question, is when you decide, okay, you're going to do an MBA, there are any number of healthcare MBAs versus a general MBA. So how do you make that decision? What factors did you consider in making that critical decision, right? Because many physicians prefer to do a healthcare MBA. What is your take on that?
So you've got to look at the faculty for the healthcare MBA, because there are plenty of healthcare MBAs that are offered across the country by folks that really don't have the credentials to teach a healthcare MBA. And it's really just other scenarios that are applied to healthcare that really don't resonate and aren't going to be of value to you. You're much better actually getting the MBA in that case. If you have a faculty like at Harvard, Wharton, other places that really actually offers healthcare as a minor for their MBA people, their straight MBA, not their executive MBA, but actually offers that, then you know that there's a faculty that actually is dedicated to that, that is on top of all of the latest information. And then it's worthwhile getting a healthcare MBA because you're actually going to learn more than you already know. Many people do a healthcare MBA, honestly, I think, because it's easier. The language is more understandable. The applications are ones that you can quickly grasp. You know, I will say, though, that part of the wonder of doing an MBA is to learn a new language, to be with people that are from different walks of life, people that understand business, understand finance, understand accounting in very different ways than you would in healthcare. And I think that perspective is extraordinarily valuable. So I would tell you that unless you really have people that are top-notch, I would get a regular MBA. Now, there are lots of different things you can do in an MBA, right? So, you know, if you are a person who really wants to look at revenue cycle, who wants to look at reimbursement, who wants to work within the context of how do we make investments to get the biggest return, then I would have a finance focus in the MBA. If you are someone who is really interested in workflows and efficiencies, then I would get an operations MBA. That's what I did, you know, and, you know, for me, I knew that my job was going to be management and leadership. And you still need to know finance. You still need to know basic internal rates of return, how to evaluate a product, how to do a back of the envelope calculation to find out that the consultant is spouting nonsense or telling the truth. You still need to have that, but the area of focus can be much more concentrated if you have an idea of what you want to go into. If you want to be you know, a front man or a leader for an organization, you may want to look at a marketing MBA or a leadership MBA. I do have, I'm a little skeptical of the leadership MBAs, you know, but some of them are well constructed in that what they do is, in order to lead, they have you take all of these other different disciplines in order to lead. If you have a leadership MBA that is basically made up of soft courses about leadership, it's probably not as valuable as actually immersing you in how to do operations, how to do marketing, how to do finance, how to do acquisitions and mergers. Then I think that that's more valuable.
That's great. So as you prepared for this MBA, you know, your plate was already full. So how did you decide what to get off your plate, right? Because you had to get something off your plate. So that's one question. And that's on the professional front. You may have had to do the same thing on your personal front. So what were the conversations like with your family in preparation for this? Because there are some people on this call I know who are thinking about taking the plunge, and I think they will have to make these decisions, you know, before they do that.
So everybody on this call is a ridiculously high achiever. Everybody is going to be used to being at the top of their class, to crushing the GMATs, to, you know, being top doc. You'll kill yourself if you try to be the most amazing cardiothoracic surgeon, most amazing teacher, most amazing husband or wife, partner, and at the same time, you're trying to do an MBA and be at the top of the class there. I think that the first conversation you have is with yourself, and then the second is with your spouse, your partner. there needs to be a hierarchy of values that's established, and you need to be able to be very serious and thoughtful about that. So if your daughter is pole vaulting on a Saturday and you're going to miss a few classes and you're going to be docked a grade for your project because of it, okay, I tell you, go see your daughter pole vault. It will come up. It's good to have that hierarchy already set when you're doing your MBA. Most of us are surgeons, and we end up in many ways putting surgery and putting patients ahead of family. You don't want to do that necessarily with your MBA. Your family, for a great part of your career, has already been displaced to some extent, and to displace them again is vanity and ego. Let's be serious. You know, you really need to make sure that your family is put first. There will be late night poker games, parties, everything that you can imagine with the MBA. You have to decide, you know, am I going to do that, or am I going to miss out on that part of the experience? I already went to college once and medical school once. Do I need to do it again? And am I going to have other liberating experiences, which are pretty nice? You know, I mean, being in the seat of a student and having that experience again is a real gift late in your career. You realize how many mistakes you made as a teacher, and hopefully you can learn from them now that you're a student again. But you have to set up your hierarchy of values, and you pretty much have to stick to it. And that's really one of the things that's most important. And then you have to practice that. You know, we talk about I mentioned the vocabulary of the business that you have to learn. The most important word in the vocabulary of business that you must learn before you start your MBA is the word no. No, I can't serve on that committee. No, I can't take that editorial review assignment. No, I can't give a keynote presentation. No, no, no. After about a month or so, people get it. You know, you tell them I'm doing my MBA, I have to say no to you. You know, they get it, and then they respect it, and they don't ask you anymore. But the first like 4 to 6 weeks is tough because, you know, nobody knows. They're all used to, I can count on Sai. He'll chair this panel. He'll find the people I need. Oh, I need a reviewer here. I'll call Sai, you know. No, you got to learn to say no. I don't know if you experienced that, but I certainly experienced that I had to say no, 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 no. After a while, your plate clears, and then amazingly, you actually have time to learn and do something differently. You know,
I had exactly the same experience. The most enlightening paper I read during my MBA is Michael Porter's "What is Strategy?" And he says one of the important things he says is half of strategy is what you don't do. And to me, reading that particular manuscript was life-altering. So exactly what you're saying is what you say no to is just as important as what you say yes to.
it's critical. It really is. And you know, I think that you also have to, at some point, you have to decide, can my lab work on autopilot? You know, what do I need to do to enable it to work on autopilot in case this doesn't work out? You know, because there's always this feeling like I'm going to get my MBA, and then I don't know if I'll actually have a job afterwards if I decide to go into the business route. And, you know, I would say that probably everyone on this call is a very well compensated cardiothoracic surgeon. To earn as much as you earn as a cardiothoracic surgeon in business, you essentially have to be at a VP level, at least a CMO, or running a physician group to get paid as much as you're getting paid now to do cardiothoracic surgery. You know, I mean, every month or two, somebody comes to my office and says, you know, I just got my MBA, I'm a neurosurgeon, and I really want to help out. I really want to take some of my neurosurgical time and I want to do administrative. What do you have for me to do? And the first conversation is, well, are you going to slow down on your neurosurgical practice? Yes, I think I can cut back. I can do 75% time on neurosurgery and 25% time in administration. I'm like, well, are you ready to take a salary cut? Because there aren't too many administrators that are paid, $1.2 million, $1.5 million, whatever, to do administration. It's just not very common unless you're the president of a health system. And so there's usually a look of shock and dismay. And then we get to, do you want to do this in your spare time? Do you want to make this a full-time endeavor? If you want to make this a full-time endeavor, you're at the top of your profession in neurosurgery, cardiothoracic surgery. You're going to have to start at a lower level and work your way up. And that means decreased respect, decreased power, decreased money. This is probably a conversation you should have with your family, before you decide to make that jump. People do not know you when you make a move to administration. They have no idea who you are, even though you're the greatest cardiothoracic or facial plastic or whatever surgeon. They just don't know you. You have no chops. They're not going to pay you, so that's tough. That's a tough realization. Many more people get an MBA and go into administration who are obstetricians, cardiologists, maybe, professions that don't pay quite as much as cardiothoracic surgery, honestly.
Yeah, internal medicine, pediatrics.
A lot of internal medicine, pediatrics folks, those are folks that are much more likely to actually do that.
So, the last time we had a conversation, you had mentioned that you still operate 1 day a week. Is that still the case?
Yeah, it's still the case.
So how do you manage that?
So only because I have completely limited the surgeries that I do, right? So, I have sort of an eclectic practice. I was very fortunate in that I was able to say, hey, this is what I love. This is what I'm going to continue doing. So I do rhinoplasties, thyroid and parathyroid surgery, and then there are a few procedures that essentially we invented or popularized that I'll still do, endoscopic orbital decompressions ultrasonically and DCRs ultrasonically. And so those are the only patients that are referred to me. Mm-hmm. It's so programmed that, you can do it and you can do it pretty easily. There isn't as much stress. It's not a new procedure. It's one that you've done. Now after 5 years of doing that, it is a little bit challenging in that we're starting to see the not keeping up completely with the most up-to-date techniques, losing a little bit in terms of the reading and work that you do. I think that there's probably a limit to how many years you can do that before you don't feel that you're fulfilling the obligation that you have to your patients. When I switched to administration, I made a conscious decision never to do any inpatient surgery. So I moved and only, like if I do thyroid and parathyroid surgery, it's not for a big Graves gland that the person needs to stay overnight or anything like that. They're all outpatient surgery center cases because do I have the commitment to go in the next day, see the patient for a few days? I can't commit to that. So I have to realize that that's a limitation. So, I only do the surgeries that are essentially ones that I don't believe I will have complications from, and ones that are really, hey, it's over and done with. It's not fair for me that I moved into administration to continue doing cancer surgery that is going to require a long-term relationship with a patient. That's not fair. On the other hand, you can do a rhinoplasty and pretty much they're fine after a month. You can do decompression, they're fine after a month. parathyroidectomy, they're fine after a month, right? So those are the kinds of procedures that I would say I would encourage you to try to do. I don't know how you do that in cardiothoracic surgery, but probably something along those lines exists. I would also say that you need to have a team in the office that basically covers you for when you're not there. I've had a nurse that I've worked with for 15 years, another nurse that I've worked with for 10 years. My office hours are limited, they're joyful, they're a break from what I do. And my nurses manage almost everything outside of the day, the half day that I'm in the office. It allows a certain level of credibility. For example, one of the things that I imposed was that you need to dictate your operative notes within 24 hours. If you don't dictate and sign off your operative note within 5 days, then you know what? You're not getting RVU credit for that. And that means at $50 for an RVU, you do the math for what your RVUs are for your cardiothoracic surgery. Oh, and by the way, if you have more than 10 delinquent accounts at the end of the year, you're not getting an incentive. So you can't do that to folks unless you're actually living, and you can say, hey, I'm pretty busy.
Right.
I do it. I'm only asking you to do what I'm doing.
Right.
And I know that you're very busy, but this is what's necessary for the healthcare system, and this is necessary for us to be able to actually communicate with everybody else in the system that the op node is there and that the care is proper. Huge pushback, but being a practicing surgeon made that easier, right? It made it a lot easier to be able to say that. It gave me a certain level of credibility. I really do miss the other things I've given up. It's people that have had a lab, people that have had breakthroughs in the lab. That's something that I will not have again. One of the projects that I initiated 6-7 years ago was using platelet-enriched plasma for correction of smell loss. And during COVID, one of my junior partners took that and finally perfected the technique. And now we have a treatment, it appears we have a treatment for smell loss that is the first real treatment that's ever been devised for smell loss. Would have been cool to do that. I'm very happy for my colleague that this is going to get him his professorship and really make a name for him. But you miss that. You really miss that part of discovery. So it could be that you're going to say, I'm going to give up my surgical practice and seeing patients because that's not what I love, but I'm going to try to keep my lab. Or you could say that, I'm still going to do lectures to medical students, because that's what I really love, touching folks in that way in education. There's lots of different paths. And one of the things you have to do is look in the mirror and say, what will keep me happy, build my credibility? What will really be something that I can accomplish even while doing my day job? You don't want it to be a hobby. You still want to be able to contribute, in a very valuable way.
Yeah. So if I'll ask one last question and then we'll open it to the floor. If you had to do one thing differently along this journey, what would you do differently?
Yeah, I would say that I would have started sooner. I went back to school when I was 55. And although I probably have some more years in my career, I think if you're really looking at making a mark in administration, in business, as a leader, you probably are better off if you're a little closer to 45 than 55. At 55, 2 years later, you're graduating, you're 57, you get some positions, unless you're really incredibly lucky. And I would say it's been incredibly fortunate, the opportunities that I've been given. Realistically, in 5 years, you can't get to the scale and the influence that I've been fortunate to enjoy. That you need to prepare a career trajectory a little bit earlier. That's not to say that it's not wonderful to have an MBA at 55, and it's not wonderful to have that journey. And it's just that it's your timetable for affecting change, for accomplishing what you'd like to do in your life is shorter, because you're beginning your MBA life, your administrative life closer to 60. That's hard, because what do you've got? 10-year runway, 20-year runway. It's true, our president is in his late 70s, so yeah, maybe, but realistically, probably a little bit sooner starting on that path would have been different. Would the opportunities have been the same? I don't know, but I would have considered the trajectory more than I did. I think that I've just been, like I said, very lucky. And I don't think you can rely on that, especially, even in the last 5 to 10 years, the number of people considering this are much greater. And so the competition is greater, much harder to do. You need to start a little earlier.
Fantastic. Now, I think we have our first questions from Rajiv. Rajiv, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. It was a great talk. From the surgeon's perspective. So my question is from a poor endocrinologist perspective, So what is your take about doing an MBA and going into a pharma versus going into just an hospital administration?
Yeah, so I have a number of my friends that actually went into pharma, and they're very happy. The challenge in pharma is that the bureaucracy, which we think is very great in medicine, is just as great in pharma, and the regulatory oversight is ridiculous. If you're really thinking about a career in pharma, then you really need to spend time during your MBA looking at accounting principles and regulatory and looking at those aspects. If you can take courses there, that will really help your pharma journey, because those guys deal with that every single day. There's one other thing I have to tell you that, and it just reminded me because you mentioned pharma. Business is very different than medicine. So if you're a doctor, as an endocrinologist, you pretty much, no one's going to fire you. Yeah, if you do something really horrible, or if there's you may choose to quit because the administration changed or something like that. But year after year, you may not be perfectly satisfied in your job, but you have a job. You basically have a contract for as long as you want to keep practicing. Business isn't that way. When your 3-year contract is up, you're done. There's no continuing in your organization. You're gone. They come and take your computer, they take your cell phone, they say goodbye, and you go look for another job. That's the same way in pharma too. Business is very different in that when we become physicians, we think essentially that we have a job almost for life. And if you look at it, most careers are that way. They're lifetime careers. And the number of times you have to change is sort of almost up to you. Sometimes it's circumstances, but a lot of times it's up to you or a better offer. In business, your contract is 3 years, maybe 5 years. When that's done, if you don't get another contract, that day you're packing up your stuff and you're leaving your office. People don't realize that, and they have to, because that happens all the time in business.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
There's a quote from Star Trek that I like. It's actually from Spock in one of the episodes of the original Star Trek, and he says to someone else who's achieved something that they really wanted, that after time, you may find that having is not so pleasing a thing after all as wanting. It's not logical, but it is often true. And to some extent, that's why these questions that are being asked are so important, because we look at the MBA, we look at the administrators, we look at what control they have over our lives in many ways in healthcare, and we say, I want that, I will say that it brings its own set of challenges, and that's why an MBA can be particularly valuable. The best course that I took actually at Wharton was a course on creativity, believe it or not. The course was taught in a very interesting way, where the feeling is that creativity doesn't arise from having a blank piece of paper that you can scribble on and draw on everything, but creativity, innovation arises from constraints. It's you only have this, and with this, you have to solve the problem. I think surgeons and doctors in general are particularly adept at that. And I think that's why in terms of administration, many doctors become successful because they're used to taking these constraints. They can't do more than this, and they're able to turn those constraints into creative outlets that really solve problems in many ways that folks coming from a different perspective aren't able to accomplish that. We have some really brilliant physician administrators and nursing administrators, but I really think that one of the things to realize is that the constraints that you have today in your current workplace, some of them are greater as you move into leadership roles, or they're just different. Yeah. And so when we talk about wanting and having, the truth is that you oftentimes exchange one set of challenges for another. And that's where the MBA becomes valuable, because you're used to the challenges you have. You can navigate them. You can do a good job around them. With the MBA, you're equipped with some additional tools that allow you to actually navigate these different challenges that are still going to make your life difficult. And you need those tools, just like you need those tools to do surgery, to diagnose, and endocrinology, to do many different things in medicine.
So Sharon has an interesting question. Do you want to unmute and ask it? Sure.
Okay, I'm being shy, but one thing that people have been looking for, and I can tell you that I've looked at, are online degrees, and I know that some of them are not as reputable as others. And I mean, of course, it's not, Wharton. Sorry, I went to Penn, so I can say that. What is your opinion on these online degrees, and if they are really helpful or just something, that you do for the sake of doing it?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is checking the box, right? Like I said, so that you can be considered for positions, but there are some degrees that are truly valuable. So I have to give my conflict of interest. So I am on the board of Wilmington University. Wilmington University in Delaware is absolutely committed to putting, people who want to teach in front of people who want to learn. And the course of study is rigorous, it's online, and it's really inexpensive. So much so that a lot of national corporations have chosen us to teach individuals in their different, training tracks. We really have good people teaching. I think that if you look at some of the more reputable online programs, you're going to be able to find one that is going to suit your needs. You don't have to have the in-person experience that Wharton provides. On the flip side, if you're going to do an online program, it's important that there be significant support and there be significant self-motivation, because there's a motivating factor that you're on a team and you're going to a class and you're giving a presentation and you've got homework due. Some of the online courses that are open-ended, unless you're an extremely disciplined individual, I would not do any of the get your MBA on your own time courses. I would still pick a course that says here in 2 years, you will accomplish the following. And you will have a course of study that is rigorous, that suits your needs. And at the end of it, you'll feel like you'll have done something instead of like, you can get this. It's, an online course that is catered to a vanity rather than actually to a practical purpose.
So I have another question on the chat. This is from Dr. Takabe, one of our breast surgeons. And his question is, how much of a practical time commitment is it to do a general MBA, for example, at Wharton?
Depends if you live in the area or not. Okay, because travel time is brutal. So a lot of my friends traveled from Houston, they traveled from Chicago, and they came to Wharton. So then every other weekend, Friday and Saturday, you are full-time at Wharton. And that means that you're flying out on Thursday night and you're coming back late on Saturday night or early on Sunday morning. Got to talk to your colleagues about covering your call, because all of a sudden you're only available to take any call every other weekend. And in addition to that, you actually have your family obligations, as we touched upon earlier. If you're able to do an MBA in your hometown, that creates a lot more flexibility, because all of a sudden, you can go home after classes and you can actually be with your family and not steal time away from them. And I didn't stay overnight almost at all at Wharton, even though I attended many functions, that were social functions. You can actually roll out of bed on Friday round and then go to Wharton. Same thing on Saturday and go to Wharton. You can get all that done. What you're not going to find is that Wharton is pretty rigorous in terms of the amount you need to contribute to the didactics. You need to be prepared. You need to spend time studying, and you need to figure out a time when you can study and when you can be a good team member. There is nothing worse than having a team member that doesn't, pull their weight on your team. I mean, Sai, you know how team-oriented Wharton is. And if you have someone like that, man, that just destroys you, because now if you have 4 people on your team and someone isn't working, man, your workload just went up considerably to cover for them. That's not to say that different people don't have different challenges during the course of their education where they need to take a week off. And we were very open on our team. It was like, hey, listen, my daughter's graduation is next week. I'm going to be worthless on the team for a week, but I'll make it up to you ahead of time or afterwards. If you have that kind of conversation ahead of time, you're golden. On the flip side, if you're really not contributing to the team, boy, you'll feel a lot of peer pressure at Wharton and other places. And that doesn't mean you have to be the best. Doesn't mean that what you produce doesn't have to be of the most incredible quality, but you still got to hit a hurdle rate, because this is a responsibility you have to your teammates. I think you've probably experienced that a bit.
Yeah, it can be embarrassing if you don't contribute, and because everyone else is working hard and everyone else is just as busy. Even if you look at the finance people on the team, they're working an incredible number of hours. It's and they still are here and putting in their time. And it's very rare for a physician to not contribute, because we're used to working hard the
It's
baseline.
true. I mean, most docs
Yeah.
it wasn't the docs that were actually the issue, on teams. I can say, at least in the 2 years I was there and in the people I've talked to, it was rare that a physician wouldn't be contributing. But it's still pressure, and you're stealing, again, hierarchy of values, know what's important, know what isn't. Do you need to crush the statistics final? Is that 100 really necessary, or is 80 and an understanding of the concepts that you need fine? You make that decision, but I would say that it's not a bad idea to each block, if it's possible, take one course that you feel will come easily, not necessarily that but at least will come a little bit easier, because you'll have the courses where you'll be sitting there with accounting principles and you'll be like, what the heck is this? I never knew this. Why do I need to learn this? And then later on you find out in your career that, it was good that I learned GAAP, because we're being investigated for that right now. So yeah, I should know something about it. So it's the professors have been doing this a long time, and the schools have been doing this a long time, and the reputable schools will actually create a curriculum that is going to be very useful to you. And you'll remember back and say, oh, gee, I learned that, and it'll help you. It really will.
So there's a question from Shannon. The question is, do you need to have done a specific bachelor's degree in order to do an MBA? Or I'm going to modify that question a little bit. Are there specific bachelor's degrees that put you in a position of advantage in getting into a competitive MBA program?
Well, I mean, if you have a business undergraduate degree, sure, no, I don't think so. I think what's in an executive MBA, everybody has a different skill set. That's why the teams are so cool, because you'll have a finance guy on your team, you'll have a doctor on your team, you'll have a marketing guy and a lady on your team. That's what's really neat about the teams. So no, I think depending upon the rigor of your MBA, you will need to have certain mathematical skills. So, there are poets and there are quants, as we say in the MBA world. And, there are some schools that are for poets, which you would say Stanford is a poet school, I would characterize. Booth is a quant school, where, everybody there is going to be looking at numbers, and that's where the reputation is that way. Then you have blends, pretty much Wharton is a blend of the two, Northwestern is a blend of the two. There's Sloan is a quant, more of a quant school at MIT. So if you're going to go to one of those quant schools, you better have crushed your GMATs, and you better understand, I won't say that it's, with my generation, the test is, can you do mental math, and if you can do mental math, then you're going to do pretty well in those schools. On the flip side, you should be articulate and be able to present an argument and be able to do talks if you're going to do a poet type of school, so choose the school depending on if you want it to be easier, depending on your strengths. If you want it to be more challenging and you want to expand your horizons, understanding that frustrations can come with that, then choose the school where you don't have strengths, so a little bit just depends on your personality and how you want to run with it. I would say there's no undergraduate degree that is specifically going to help you unless it's a business degree.
So Ed, this has been fantastic, and like all good things, it has to come to an end. We're at the bottom of the hour. So thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. It's always educational having a conversation with you. The last long conversation I had was a year ago, and I've learned so much more in this conversation. So thank you so much.
Well, Sai, I want to thank everybody and open, listen, my name is Edmund Probitkin. It's edmund.probitkin@jefferson.edu. If you shoot me a line and you have some questions, it is a particularly challenging time at Jefferson with a new CEO coming shortly, but I'm more than happy to try to carve out some time, because it's only with these kinds of conversations that actually we learn from each other. It's still the beauty of academic medicine. And if we can maintain some of that in the business world, then that's all to the better. So thank you for having me.
Thank you again.